In the early hours, when sirens wailed simultaneously across three of Iran's largest cities, the Middle East ceased to operate under the rules that had governed the Israeli-Iranian confrontation for 4 decades. Tehran, Tabriz and Isfahan, the political capital, the industrial hub of the Northwest, and the heart of the nuclear program, were struck within the same 90-minute window by an Israeli operation that hit 15 military and strategic targets spread across more than 1,200 kilometers of Iranian territory. The geographic scale of the attack had no precedent in the history of the conflict between the two countries, and the message was as precise as the missiles that delivered it. The number 15 was not arbitrary. 15 installations struck in a single night represented more targets than all operations attributed to Israel against Iran in the previous decade combined, including sabotage at Natanz, the assassinations of nuclear scientists, and cyber attacks like Stuxnet. In operational terms, according to analysts at the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London, coordinating 15 simultaneous strikes across 3 cities separated by hundreds of kilometers demanded a level of intelligence on Iranian air defenses that went far beyond any capability the Israeli Air Force had previously demonstrated in public. The equation had changed. It had changed because the previous pattern, the so-called shadow conflict, in which Israel and Iran exchanged blows through proxies, clandestine operations, and plausible deniability, had been shattered in a single night. For the first time, Israeli fighter jets operated openly over Iranian airspace, striking targets on Iranian sovereign territory without any pretense of anonymity or ambiguity. The central paradox of this operation lay precisely here. Israel had spent 4 decades building a doctrine of shadow warfare against Iran, and it was Iran itself that, by launching hundreds of ballistic missiles directly against Israeli soil in the weeks prior, had destroyed the conditions that made that doctrine possible. The era of strategic ambiguity had ended, and the one who ended it was not Jerusalem. It was Tehran. Consider what that distance actually means in practice. 1,200 kilometers is roughly the distance from Lisbon to Barcelona, traversed by military aircraft that had to cross the airspace of at least 2 countries, most likely Jordan and Iraq, according to analyses from the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, conducting in-flight refueling with the support of aerial tankers, penetrating Iran's air defense network built around Russian S-300 systems, and striking targets with enough precision to destroy military infrastructure without triggering mass civilian casualties that would have turned the operation into a diplomatic catastrophe. Each one of those steps represented a potential point of failure. Not one of them failed. But the true impact of this operation extended far beyond battlefield numbers. The selected targets revealed the strategic intent with a clarity that rendered any official communique unnecessary. In Isfahan, the missiles struck facilities linked to the uranium conversion complex, not the reactor itself, but the supporting infrastructure that feeds the enrichment cycle. In Tabriz, the targets were production and storage bases for Shahed drones, the same unmanned aircraft Iran had supplied to Russia to bomb Ukrainian cities, and that the Houthis were firing at commercial vessels in the Red Sea. In Tehran, the strikes concentrated on facilities belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, the parallel military structure that controls both the missile program and the regime's regional proxy network. Israel was not punishing Iran for a past attack. It was degrading Iran's capacity to launch the next one. And here was the paradox that the planners had failed to calculate, not the Israelis, but the Iranians. For years, the Tehran regime had built its deterrence on 3 pillars: the nuclear program as a latent existential threat, the proxy network as an instrument of regional pressure, and ballistic missiles as the guarantee of direct retaliation. All 3 pillars were struck on the same night. The Shaheds, destroyed in Tabriz, represented months of production, estimated by analysts at the Royal United Services Institute at approximately 400 stored units, each costing between $20,000 and $50,000 to produce, yet capable of inflicting millions in damage to civilian infrastructure. The destruction of a single night was equivalent, by those estimates, to a production loss of between $8 million and $20 million. A figure that sounds modest until one considers that Iran's total military budget, according to data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, ran at approximately $6.9 billion annually, squeezed by sanctions that severed the country's access to the global financial system. And the greatest paradox of the entire crisis lay precisely here. The weapon the regime had launched to wound its enemy was, in that moment, destroying its own source of income. With every ballistic missile Iran fired at Israel, the risk premium on Persian Gulf oil rose, and with it temporarily the revenue of the exporting countries. But Iran, barred by American sanctions from selling oil on formal markets, collected none of the gains from that spike. Those who did were Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, the very countries the Iranian regime accused of complicity with Washington and Jerusalem. Every Iranian military escalation enriched its regional rivals and impoverished itself. The cycle was self-destructive, and that night it accelerated. In the shadow of this monumental strategic miscalculation, one actor was watching everything with calculated satisfaction. And here was the actor that the headlines were not mentioning with the frequency the data warranted: China. Beijing was, by a wide margin, Iran's largest oil buyer, absorbing approximately 90% of Iran's crude exports, according to maritime tracking data compiled by the firm Kepler. Every round of escalation between Israel and Iran placed Tehran in a position of ever deeper dependence on Beijing, because the Chinese market was the only viable destination for Iranian oil, sold at discounts reaching $15 per barrel below the Brent price, a differential that, at an annual volume of approximately 1,300,000 barrels per day, represented nearly $7 billion per year that Iran failed to collect compared to market price. $7 billion, more than Iran's entire military budget. In a moment, you will understand why this specific detail about China changes the entire nature of the crisis. But first, there was a human dimension that strategic analyses rarely touched. General Hossein Salami, Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC, a man of grandiose speeches about the destruction of Israel and immaculate uniforms that had never seen a trench, watched that night as the installations under his direct command were struck, while the air defense system Russia had sold to Iran failed to intercept the majority of the incoming projectiles. This man is not the emotional protagonist of this analysis. He is the investigative coordinate of what the regime consumes, a military leadership whose deterrence credibility was pulverized in the same span of time it takes a radio announcer to read the morning headlines. The historical analogy that captures this dynamic with the greatest precision is not the Six-Day War of 1967, when Israel destroyed Arab air forces on the ground, though the temptation to use it was understandable. It is Operation Opera of 1981, when 8 Israeli F-16s crossed Jordanian and Saudi airspace to destroy Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor in Baghdad. The resemblance does not lie in scale. The operation against Iran was incomparably larger, but in strategic logic. In both cases, Israel concluded that the cost of acting preemptively, including the immediate international condemnation, was lower than the cost of allowing a regional adversary to complete its nuclear or conventional capacity. In 1981, that decision was condemned even by the United States. A decade later, when Saddam Hussein launched Scud missiles at Tel Aviv during the Gulf War, American analysts acknowledged that the strike on Osirak had likely prevented those missiles from carrying nuclear warheads. The archive was growing, and archives have no expiration date. Step back and take in the full picture. The Israeli operation against 15 targets in 3 Iranian cities was not merely a military strike. It was the formalization of a new doctrine. Israel demonstrated that it could hit any point on Iranian territory at any time, with surgical precision, without Russian defense systems being able to stop the operation. The S-300, the air defense system Iran, spent nearly a decade negotiating with Moscow, paying approximately $800 million for 4 complete batteries, had proven inadequate against the combination of electronic warfare, stealth munitions, and signals intelligence that Israel deployed. For Russia, this failure was a commercial catastrophe. The S-300 was its primary military export product to the Middle East, and its public humiliation in live combat against Western and Israeli technology compromised future sales to any country that had been considering a purchase. The weapon had turned on its seller. And here was what that layer about China revealed, and why it changes the entire nature of the analysis. Beijing did not need to fire a single missile to emerge as the greatest beneficiary of the Israel-Iran confrontation. Every escalation pushed Iran closer to total Chinese dependency. Every American sanction that strangled the Iranian economy made the Chinese market more indispensable. And every Israeli strike that degraded Iranian military capacity reduced Iran's strategic value as a partner for any power other than China, because only Beijing simultaneously had the political willingness to ignore American sanctions, the energy demand volume to absorb Iranian oil, and the strategic patience to wait for Iran, weakened and isolated, to accept increasingly unfavorable terms in exchange for minimal economic protection. This is not merely a regional crisis. It is the first real test of who controls the energy arteries of the 21st century, and the outcome of that test will redraw the global power map for decades. But there was one layer we had not yet touched, and it changes the nature of this analysis entirely. The cost to Israel was also real, though the headlines rarely measured it. Each long-range air operation against Iran consumed precision munitions that could not be replenished in weeks. The air-to-ground missiles used in operations of this scale cost between $500,000 and $2 million per unit, depending on the model. 15 targets struck with multiple projectiles. Each represented an estimated expenditure of between $30 million and $100 million in munitions in a single night. Not counting aircraft wear, the fuel consumption of aerial refueling tankers, and the operational cost of maintaining real-time signals intelligence over hostile territory more than 1,000 kilometers away. Israel could execute this operation once, perhaps twice. It could not repeat it indefinitely without compromising its stockpiles for the scenario its military planners considered even more dangerous: a simultaneous conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And here was what that detail changed. Iran's response did not need to be symmetrical to be effective. Tehran did not need to strike 15 Israeli targets. It only needed to demonstrate that the cost of each Israeli operation exceeded the benefit. And the instrument of that demonstration was not ballistic missiles, whose trajectories the Israeli Arrow and Iron Dome systems were tracking with increasing efficiency. It was the proxies. Hezbollah, with its 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at northern Israel, the Houthis disrupting maritime traffic in the Red Sea at a cost of billions of dollars in logistical diversions to global commerce, and Iraqi militias attacking American bases with cheap drones that cost less than the fuel of the jets hunting them. Every additional day was one more day of pressure on the countries that most depended on that resource. Countries that would generate pressure on Washington that the White House sooner or later could not ignore. What the night of 15 targets established was not the end of the Israel-Iran confrontation. It was the irreversible death of the previous model and the birth of a new paradigm in which both sides operate without the safety net of ambiguity. The question no analyst was answering with sufficient clarity was whether Iran, cornered between the military humiliation of not responding and the existential risk of escalating toward an open conflict it cannot win conventionally, would make the decision its own generals had been avoiding for 20 years, accelerating uranium enrichment to the threshold of a functional nuclear weapon, transforming the latent threat into a fait accompli. The answer to that question will not come from Tehran or from Jerusalem. It will come from Beijing, and that day was drawing closer. If this subject matters to you as much as the data suggests it should, subscribe to the channel and share this video, because this debate needs more informed voices, not more empty headlines.